The bandwidth for the Wild Pod Dog podcast this week was sponsored by collarways.com and the Lighty Light Up Collar, www.lightupcollar.co.uk, the LED light collar to be seen in. With Karen Wild and Jon Buskell. Hi Karen, how you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm cold. It's minus 15 in Sweden and the Basset Hounds complained on their walk this morning.
Oh, minus 15. You know, it's absolutely beautiful sunshine here. I don't know if you can see out the window just behind me, but it's deceptively cold, but it's not minus 15, I think. But it's a case of taking the dogs out while it's sunny now, then going out later when the sun's off the, off the streets and everything and off the fields, and it starts to freeze up. And it's just, they're a bit shocked, I think, because they're all basking in the window, sort of enjoying the sunshine. And then we go out and it's like, whoa, what was that?
So what have we got on the show today?
Well, I thought we would address, seeing as, we're coming up to Christmas time, it's very sort of family busy. And if you've got a dog that likes to eat everything in sight, this is going to be a really useful podcast for you. The kind of dog that, you honestly would just eat your dinner faster than anything, would snatch things, would chase after things, but generally is going to be golloping up every single thing they can get their mouth around. This makes it a very big problem when you have lots and lots of things around Christmas decorations and that kind of thing. So it's not just for Christmas, but this is something that I thought would be quite topical. Okay,
that's a really, really good topic. From chewing walls, eating bits of walls, to bits of tinsel, to all those nasty things. What should we start with then?
Well, I think, let's talk about the problem itself. What we're trying to look at really in these podcasts is what is natural for a dog to do, what you can train and get rid of, if you like, and certain things that you can only train and manage. And sometimes there are instincts that a dog has that are so powerful that to try and get rid of it altogether is nigh on impossible. But what you can do is do your best to control the problem. Now, the other part of it is that it's not always a problem to the dog. Gulping and eating things that aren't good for them is a problem, but the dog doesn't necessarily see it like that. So you have to be very aware of what you're looking at with your dog before you start to tackle it.
Definitely. Do you have, I know you've got your woofs there. Do you have any experience at home with your dogs being like this, having this kind of behaviour?
I do, yes, definitely. I used to have a border collie, and I swear to goodness, if it was not nailed to the floor, he would have it in his mouth. And that was right from puppy stages, which I can see is a very natural stage, and most puppies will do this, all the way through till he was 10. It was always the same. And you do learn to get around these problems with a bit of common sense, good management, quite a bit of training. I've got a situation now where, even this morning, I didn't hear something come through the door. Well, I heard the postman come, but somebody put a check through the door. A client, so thank you very much to them for paying me. But I did hear the dogs kind of bark a bit, and then I never heard any more. And one of my dogs, fortunately, he is the kind of dog that would have something in his mouth. It's diminished as he's got older, but as a puppy, he was, quite forcible about these things. And I came into the office and he brought it in, and it was right next to my chair. What I'd actually taught him to do, if I tell him to go and do it, is to go and fetch the post for me. Now, this time, obviously, I didn't tell him, so it could have gone badly wrong, bearing in mind it was a check. But because I've taught him every single time to bring it to me, what he'd actually done, and I wasn't there, but he normally brings it to my office chair if I'm in, he'd actually brought it. So thank goodness for that. I didn't chew it up. He knows that his reward comes from bringing it to me. So there are ways around it, and I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet. What I'm trying to say is, yes, been there, done it with my collie, doing it now. It's a habit with all of my dogs that if I know they like having something in their mouth, I work it, and I use that instinct because I can't get rid of it.
I think a good place to start here then perhaps is for us as dog owners to be honest and identify. Before we can actually say whether it's a problem, we have to look at the behaviour that's there. I can say, for example, Winnie, actually, who is in the room today with Agsy, she's actually got my serviette from my lunch on the floor. It's a paper serviette. She's grabbed it and she's chewed it up. And I don't approve of that behaviour. And she has a tendency to go and try and get toilet rolls as well. And I can see that that's a behaviour that I don't like. and I hold my hand up and say, I've got a dog that likes to go for things to chew them up.
And I mean, we've all had instances where the dog's got hold of something. Usually the highest instance is when they're younger, but like I say, there are some dogs that really are just constantly like that. And nevertheless, no matter what age they are, there are some things they get hold of, food and non-food, that aren't always best for them.
What do we do about it then?
Well, I think there are lots and lots of things you can do. So we're only going to be able to touch on a few things today. But the first thing I think about is, and the first thing that most people don't want to do, but they're going to have to, is to manage the situation by being very alert to what you leave lying around. Now, I know that you should be able to train your dog not to touch anything, but my one premise is you cannot train the dog when you're not there. So if your attention is distracted, which unless you follow your dog around all day, it's going to happen. If there are things that they are tempted to have, the very first step you do, just through sheer safety, is to make sure you don't leave anything within reach. And that can be from floor level right up to the size of your dog, because believe me, once they've started rewarding themselves by getting stuff off the worktops, they're going to carry on doing that. So if you're going to, I suppose, establish a baseline, train everybody in your house, okay, the dog is likely to chew things up. So we need to make sure that we have places for things. And that's really easy to say. I appreciate that. And everyone could say, well, congratulations, Karen, well done. That didn't take much. But I can't tell you how many remote controls and things have been, mobile phones have been reported to me, Kindles, the dog's had those. So let's put them somewhere so that the dog's not tempted, or if the dog knows where they are, at least they can't reach. So that's the easy thing. But it extends to things like in the kitchen. If you've got a bin that isn't secure, or if you've got a dishwasher that's slightly open and you have the kind of dog that's very food oriented, then that's going to be a temptation for them. I always make sure that I have a really solid bin if it's in the kitchen, or it's in a cupboard. If I've got, now that I've got smaller dogs, it's easier for me to have like a metal bin with a proper lid on it, and they can't reach the lid.
I'm the same actually.
Reach, but you make sure that they can't get in, because there's things you put in the bin, like chicken bones. You don't want them to have a cooked chicken bone. It's not.
Oh, absolutely. I do the same. I have the bin sort of in the cupboard, as it were. But the trouble is that people in my house have a tendency to take the bag out when it's getting full and hang it on the side. And then, of course, Winnie in particular will go straight for it. So we have a rule here, because they just do this, that we have a rule here that any chicken bones go out instantly.
Right, into the outside bin. Yeah, we do as well. And also they're not nice in the bin for very long. But I think it's not a case of, adapting to the dog as much as understanding that this is a creature, particularly if they have this very powerful instinct, that is going to try to do it. So they're going to be permanently frustrated. You're going to be permanently paying attention to them for doing something you don't want. So I'm very hot on straightforward solutions to problems, the quickest route, the easiest route. Some might say it's lazy. I don't think it's lazy. I think it's good practice, because there's always a margin for error. So keep them out of the way.
Yeah, I have a kitchen gate.
Yeah. And that's kind of my first, if you like, my first realistic tip. And it's not really a tip. It's more of this is why I do this. The danger comes, though, when you have a dog that is eating other things that perhaps they're not safe to eat. So you could have a dog that eats gravel. I went to see an absolutely beautiful dog that was gulping down stones from the garden, and they were really big stones. She'd had to have 2 operations already to move them. I know. And she was an absolutely beautiful dog. The owners were very experienced owners. They've got lots and lots of dogs. They trained lots and lots of dogs to a very high level. So this was the first time they'd ever had a dog with that kind of strength of instinct. It wasn't a nervous instinct. They weren't paying attention to it unwittingly. They didn't, they weren't reinforcing it by saying, what are you doing? They were just absolutely baffled. With a situation like that, you sometimes just have to weigh up on the side of safety, like I've said. And even when the dog's out, when they were taking the dog for walks, they ended up having to muzzle her because she was so quick to eat everything in sight that there was nothing more they could do. They trained an excellent recall. So if you have a dog that's dashing off and eating things, a recall is a must. And they also trained an off command, which if you want to know how to train that, I've got a video on my YouTube account on how to teach the beginnings of that. That was partly for jumping up at people, but it also teaches dogs to back away, wait for something. But we'll come back to that in a minute. The other pitfall, though, is obviously if the dog's eaten something unsafe, then that's an immediate problem. But guarding can be one of the flip sides to this instinct. So you might have a dog that is so obsessed with having everything in its mouth that it's motivated by food items, non-food items, anything that smells interesting. And that can be an awful lot of things in your household. Now, I'm not going to attempt to deal with a guarding problem here on this podcast. And the reason is because I see so many of them where owners have tried little bits of advice here and there. They've perhaps done piecemeal things. They've followed a bit of advice here and a bit of advice there, maybe seen a poster and this is how you deal with it. That's not a very safe situation, because what can happen with guarding is it can develop very, very quickly into an almost impossible to manage problem, because the dog generalizes very fast when it's something that's valuable to it. So I'm not going to attempt to do that. If you need help and your dog is guarding already, you must consult an expert. Get an APBC behaviourist if you're in the UK, apbc.org.uk, and get somebody to come in. Ask your vet to refer you, get somebody to come in. But what I want people to understand is this is an extension of the dog's desire to have something. I had a lady who, she's a beautiful dog, terrific dog, has had a problem with it guarding, and it was guarding a tissue in her sleeve while she was sitting on the sofa next to the dog.
Oh,
and she
wow.
had no idea that that was what the dog was after. But you've mentioned, the sort of dogs liking tissues. She actually had it, how you like when you've got a cold and people tuck in their sleeve, it was there. So this is why I say you've got to be careful what you do. But if you've got a dog that is very into their food, their items, then there is a downside, I'm afraid, that doesn't necessarily involve safety for the dog. It involves safety for you and people around them. I certainly wouldn't advise taking stuff off them willy-nilly. I would advise teaching the dog to bring things to you as a general rule. Like I was saying, Pickles, bless him, brought me that check in an envelope from the door to my desk, because what he could have done was gone, that's interesting, it's had a hand on it, it smells very nice, and taken it off and shredded it or eaten something inside. But it's just a repetitive thing that I always tell him as soon as he's got something in his mouth. I tell him what a great dog he is and what a clever boy, and thank you very much, I'll have it now, and here's a treat, and I swap it.
Karen, just one thing occurs here. How do we distinguish between an anxious dog, for example, if you leave the dog, if you go away and the dog goes and eats something, and a dog that is showing this behavior all the time? Do you see a distinction between it? Because, how do we tackle two problems here? Or
yeah, you have to, any anxiety, I would say straight away, the slightest hint of anxiety through, there's Pickles now, he's heard we're talking about him. Any anxiety, you need an expert straight away. Anxiety is, fear is the immediate thing. So, if something jumps out at you and goes boo, and it's, you feel immediately, you might feel fearful. What's that? Anxiety is kind of the ongoing thing that it might happen again. So that can be a very stressful existence for a dog. So if it's things like you've gone out and the dog has a separation issue and the dog indulges in destructive behaviour, then that could be a separation issue. It could be anxiety, or it could be sheer boredom. But you'd need an expert to tell you sometimes the difference, because it's not always apparent. Usually separation is within the first sort of half an hour of the person leaving. So you could leave a camera rolling to have a look or peep back. If it's sheer boredom, you actually need to leave the dog something to do. So I would always say this kind of is a next bit of advice really for this issue is, if it's not the anxiety, if it's more that the dog needs something to do, or the kind of dog that just has to have something in its mouth, then by all means give them something to have that they can have that is valuable. So it could be a rubber toy with food stuffed inside, or something that's suitable for that kind of purpose, or a toy they can play with that the food drops out bit by bit, or a foraging game where you hide something in an old cardboard box, or 2 or 3, so that they go through the motions of doing this kind of instinct, but in a way that you can control. So they're not foraging in your dishwasher, they're foraging in a cardboard box. And okay, an old cereal box, you come home and it's all over the floor, but at least it's not your curtains ripped up while they were trying to get out, or to get through, I don't know, next door's cat or whatever they can see, because sometimes chasing is another issue with this. It's not your cupboard that's been emptied. It's not, so we're going to channel what we've got. And so instead of trying to suppress the problem and squash it flat, what you're actually going to realize is, look, this dog is motivated by this sort of thing. There is nothing really that you can do to change that. But what you can do is steer the motivation into, okay, well, I don't want you to chew that, so chew this. Cut down the opportunities for chewing stuff and getting hold of stuff and eating it that you don't want them to have, completely zero the risk there, and give them something that is specially designed, purpose built for them.
I have a problem with giving dogs things like toilet rolls.
Is that because you think it gives them a sort of taste for it?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think then they're on the lookout for it. And I don't really know how good it is for a dog. I know they shred the toilet roll, but do they actually chew it? Do they swallow it? What effect does it? I'm not a vet, so I can't comment on this.
I think no, well, me neither. I mean, my suggestion, if you had like a cardboard box for them to forage, would be they'd be foraging for something inside the box, not just the box itself. Yeah, you put something or a treat stuffed toy inside it. You're trying to give them a jigsaw puzzle. But if the dog is eating the cardboard as well, don't give it to them. It would be my advice. So, if you know that that's what they're going to do, if some dogs aren't that bothered about the cardboard, they just want the thing inside. So I would say, yeah, on tempering that bite a little bit, I would think if they're eating the cardboard as well, no. And I've certainly never given a dog a toilet roll deliberately. I don't think that's particularly great because I think, it's not meant to be inside them. But I would be thinking about developing a range of toys that my dog could have that I know that I've supervised them with originally. So I don't just give it to them the first time I'm not there. I would make sure that they've got it while I'm around, keeping an eye, and I can see what's actually happening. So if they are starting to eat it in an inappropriate way or try and swallow that as well, I would perhaps upgrade to something. And there are super strong rubber things that you can give your dog. But as with any toy, there's always a risk. Always. Anything you give them, there's always a risk. But I would be careful. I sometimes see people with, for example, puppies, and they'll say, well, they have toys to play with when we're not there. And they're giving them like raggers and fabric tuggy toys. I didn't used to leave those for my puppies because I know that there's bits that come off. And I don't want my dog to develop a shredding fabric habit. I've got cushions and carpet and so
I never leave mine. I don't let them have things unsupervised. I mean, what we're talking about here, we're talking about management of your house. For example, I have a dog gate, but it's a baby gate, keeping them out of the kitchen, although Digby is very good at undoing it. But I mean, the idea, it keeps the others out. That sort of management. And then I'm a firm believer in supervision. I like to take the toys out so the dogs know that now it's an exciting time and it's marked clearly that this is playtime.
Yeah. And if you have a dog that doesn't like particular toys, maybe that drive isn't that strong. I mean, we're really talking about dogs that just have to have something in their mouth the whole time. Not to say that there aren't measures of how to deal with the ones that aren't that enthusiastic. You can spice it up, like I say, foodie inside. But those are kind of, if you were looking at somebody who doesn't have a lot of time, they've got a very busy lifestyle, they take their dog out, they do a lot of things, but gosh, this dog's always doing that. That is your direction. When you actually look at the problem, there are some real plus sides to it. It might not seem that way, but you have a dog there that is highly motivated by certain things, very easy for you to control yourself. So if you have a dog that often that goes with this problem is the dog is a chaser. But if you have control over something in your hand, such as food or a toy that you can make it squeak or move, you are then using a very similar instinct to the one they already have, but it's you plus that. So you make it then that you have conditions on them getting these kinds of things. So for example, rather than just giving them their dinner every time whenever they feel like it or whenever the clock says it's tea time, I take a handful of that food. I mean, if they're the kind of dog that inhales, then you can use the food alone. If they're a little bit more bored by it because they get it all the time, then you can spice it up. But the idea is you then say, right, here are the conditions. If you bring me that thing, whatever it is, then you get something turn and you develop a really good strong retrieve instinct. You also develop a lot of self-control in the dog. The issue with an instinct like this is if you don't teach the dog to have some kind of self-regulator, then it quickly gets out of control and you have a dog that will snatch things off you, that will shake things, and we talked about this in the last podcast, that will steal, that will so let's get it so that we know the dog likes to have something in its mouth. First of all, allow it the opportunity to de-stress by chewing on those things that are safe. Secondly, let's make it useful. Let's make it so that they don't feel pressured and guardy about things, that they actually think, God, I really like bringing it to you, because either you throw it for them and it's good fun and they bring it back and throw it again, or actually they get to swap it for something even better. So it becomes a rewarding cycle. that you actually develop. And you can formally train this, or you can just do it as part of your everyday, routine. Every single time they've got a toy, you teach them, well, here you go, let go of it and I'll give you this, or I'll offer you this and then you let go of it and I'll swap it, and make sure that you're always the one that controls the most valuable aspect of whatever it is you're trying to exchange. Now, I know people are probably going to be shouting at the podcast saying, but my dog just grabs things and runs away. They just run off with it. They want it. And of course they do. And if you've got a dog that's gone down that route of you chasing after it, then that now becomes a really big game. But one of the reasons they're trying to get it off you is because they think it's really valuable. So a really easy way to train it is start with a corner of the room. Start with quite a low value toy, something fairly dull that they get quite a lot, that's easy for you to sort of hold and they can't grip onto very easily. So nothing that's going to develop into a big tug game. So usually a rubber toy or something quite, that's long enough for you to get hold of it. Oh, by the way, don't do this if your dog is already guarding. Like I say, go and get an expert to help you. But right at puppyhood, get the dog playing with the toy right in front of you and you're facing the corner. And it helps if you sit on the floor as well, as long as they're not going to jump into your face. Then as you toss the toy into the corner, which is what you do when your dog's kind of just interested, they go and grab it, but the only place they can go is turning back to you. And at that point, you make it sound like the best thing they've ever done. Really, oh, wow, that was fantastic. Play with them again with the toy. If they don't want to release it, you either have two toys the same or you have some food. Swap it. If you've got a problem with them not releasing the toy, again, get an expert in, because this is something you deal with, or ask your dog trainer if you've got a puppy. How do I teach that? But don't get into the habit of just snatching it and going, thank you very much. Play with them with it for a bit longer than it took them to go and fetch it, and then throw it again. And pretty soon you have a dog that's fetching it, bringing it back to you so that you will play with them, not because they got the toy itself.
Sounds like a very, very good activity, actually, and one that you can train from a very, very early age. But also, let's remember that even old dogs enjoy learning new things, that they do love the mental stimulation. There was one thing that occurred to me while you were talking about this, Karen, and I'm sure there are people who listen to the podcast who actually don't have dogs yet. They're looking at what dogs to get. How much should we take into consideration the breed of a dog? Now, I appreciate that people will have crossbreeds, and absolutely. But of course, with one of the things with pure standard breed dogs, that you can see the key traits. For example, I know that a Basset is going to be motivated by smell. Absolutely. And that a Labrador is going to be motivated by carrying things, finding things to put in its mouth. How much do we have to take into consideration this from both a choice perspective and also sort of, training these kind of behaviors? Do we need to actually look at the type of dog, the breed that it is?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I'm always wary to being sort of almost breed prejudice. I'm very wary about that. But anecdotally, from my caseload, I know that dogs that are bred for retrieve type work or scent type work are going to be the kinds of dogs that have this. Beagles are another one. Any sort of hound, spaniels to some extent, yeah, because they're not necessarily gulpers. They will chase. They've got quite a strong scent drive, so they're going to do that. And retrievers and Labradors, retrievers as well. You just know almost that this is going to be okay. We've got that. Again, to some extent, terriers. You could pretty much say, well, that's what dogs like to do. But if you picked up, say, a lap type bred dog, a toy dog, toy breed, again, it's not an absolute, but you're less likely to have that kind of instinct in them. So I'd always say, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I'd say if you want a dog that you're going to work and you're going to train and you're going to do something with, then there are two sides to the coin. Yes, you want a dog that's going to be, a good family dog and all this sort of thing. And everybody wants a good family dog. But if you get one that's got a working background, then you're going to have to deal with that working background. So be prepared for it. Don't suddenly be surprised that your golden retriever is gulping everything in sight and potentially wants to guard stuff because they love food so much. That's part and parcel of what you've got. Now, that's not to say that other dogs, Bichons and poodles and all sorts of things, they're not, of course they do. Every dog has a doggy instinct to some extent. So my tip would be, don't just judge on the breed. The breed is part of it, and it's a pretty strong indicator because that's, they're bred for looks now more. But there is a dollop of working sense background there. Secondly, make sure you go and see the parents of the dog, the aunties, the uncles, the grandparents. Don't be put off by excuses that you can't see them, because this is going to be your family dog for 15 years or more, if you're lucky. You know, you cannot make a decision like that lightly. In my opinion, you need to see the family dogs. You need to see the other family dogs. You need to see. I wouldn't dream of getting a dog where I hadn't seen the mum at all, because you were almost certainly from a puppy farm. You know, but I'd also want to see the dad separately. And I know they're put out to stud. I'd still go and see them. I would. And I'd want to see, like I say, sisters, brothers, aunties, uncles, grandma, grandpa. I know that sounds excessive, but to me, no, it isn't.
No. I mean, as someone who's, you know, who's bred and breeds basset hounds, I always say to prospective owners, people that call, you know, please come and see us, meet all the relatives. If I've used a dog from further afield, I used a dog from over in Norway, who is the father of Digby, of Tia's last litter, and he was here staying for a month. So anyone that was interested, I said, you know, come and meet him. If you know, it's really important. I truly believe in that. It's really, really important. You get a sense. And any breeder that starts to faff out the old, oh, well, you know, I've sent the mum away because she needs to rest away from the puppies, that to me is a very big warning sign.
The real klaxon, warning, you know, it's like, right. And a good breeder would never do that. I mean, it's like saying to somebody, well, you know, if you're buying a car, it's like, can I see the logbook? Oh, no, I've posted it somewhere. You'd be like, no. So, no, absolutely. But I also think that there's a lot to be said for, you can assess the puppies to an extent. But when they are the sort of age where you're making the decision about getting the puppy, you know, I mean, the first time I saw a litter that I recently helped someone with, you know, the puppies were 5 weeks old. There's not a lot you can tell, really. You can, an experienced eye, but how many people look at litters of puppies every day? You know, so I was looking at, you know, the behaviour of the mum, the behaviour of the others, the behaviour of the dad, the behaviour of, you know, so I was trying to pick out something that wasn't strongly prey oriented, because I knew that this particular family were not going to appreciate that in their dog. Yes, they've all got it, but to some degree, some have it more than others.
Sure. I mean, I think in my experience, I've seen these sort of behaviours, as well as come out in young pups, also come up at around about when the dog's a teenager, when they're going through that point just between puppydom junior to into sort of, you know, the teenage point.
Yeah, you know, I'm just writing an article about chasing and sort of controlling that drive, and I interviewed David Ryan, who is a BBC member and BCAB, and, you know, he's a behaviour consultant. And he's written this book, Stop, which is about controlling dogs with predatory chasing problems, you know, and it's a very, very good book. I highly recommend it to everybody, because it really is very straightforward advice and very practical. You know, and I sort of said to him, is this something that you can stop? You know, I mean, with regard to chasing, he meant, but, you know, the strong prey drive. And he was saying, no, I've never come across one that I couldn't, given time and effort. But, you know, sometimes the time and effort required is more than your average pet owner is capable of or able to supply. So that's not meant to be anything sort of like, well, we're experts and you're not. It's actually, look, you're going to have, it's not that difficult, but it is jolly time consuming, and you have to be on it all the time. And be quite tiring, you know, so let's not pretend. People are perfectly capable of doing it, but whether you want to spend your life doing it is another question.
I think the whole thing about timing was something that I was just actually going over in my head there. This is obviously not, well, I mean, I suppose depending on the intelligence of your dog and your training skills, etc., but this is not a quick fix. Typically, it's something that's going to take time. You're going to have to plan it out. How am I going to correct this behavior? How am I going to get the behavior that I want, that's good for the dog and good for us as the owners?
Absolutely. I think, you know, you can crack the problem. It's not going to be forever, but the dog is always going to have that instinct, and the dog is always going to get a certain amount of enjoyment out of doing it. So if you try, like I said right at the start, if you try and suppress the behavior, you're going to get miserable dogs. You're going to get it coming out in all sorts of ways of frustration and all kinds of dreadful things. So you're going to have to provide some kind of way for them to achieve enjoyment.
What about the owner's reaction, though? Because I've seen that, for example, the dog has gone in and chewed to pieces the bin, for example. and one person in the family can go in and be, well, okay, this is a problem, we left it out, we need to deal with this, and the other person can completely overreact and, you know, yell at the dog, you bad dog, you know, you're such a stupid blah blah blah. How do we influence our dog's behavior by, you know, losing our cool?
Well, if the dog's mid-bin, you know, if they're right in it and you tell them no, then they're going to associate the action of being in the bin with you appearing, and they will learn something from that. You know, head in bin plus owner angry, you know, equal usually. So I can sort of see that might deter them next time. But what it actually might deter them from doing is doing it when you're anywhere around. So they'll only ever do it when you're not there. So I think, and the other issue is that if you're talking about thieving, you know, as soon as the dog grabs something and everyone goes, ah, you know, which is our natural reaction, particularly if it's something really valuable. You know, or even the remote control. I mean, you try replacing remote control easily without having to reprogram one of those awful universal things. It's just a nightmare, you know, or your mobile phone. So, of course, you're going to go, ugh. But, you know, if you pay attention to it in the wrong way, the dog either is going to just disappear or try and swallow it very quickly. Or learn next time that, you know, everyone wants to play when I do this. Whereas when they pick up their own toys, nobody makes a sort of a word of effort to try and stop them. You have to remember that. Having said that, you don't just leave them to go and swallow all the batteries and things like that, which is why I would urge people to do some retrieve training. So as soon as they pick it up and you think, oh, I left it on the table, shouldn't have done that, you can go, what a clever dog, come on then. And the dog goes, huh? Oh, what? Oh, you've got something better, brings it over, you swap it, and quickly like run to the fridge or anything to try and get them to go, oh, something nice is going to happen. So they don't feel under threat. They don't feel like you're about to take it off them for no reason. They might realise that if they spit it out, they get something. And I've got a terrific video of a little Cocker Spaniel that I saw not that long ago that was doing exactly this. And she was guarding as well. So there was quite a problem going on. I'll ask the owner if I've got permission to post it, because she has the most fantastic retrieve now, and she will pick up all sorts of bits to bring them over to the owner, spit them out before she gets there, and have a reward. Now, she's also got an excellent recall. So if her owner sees her going towards something, she thinks, I don't actually know what that is, I don't want that dog to touch it, she just calls the dog and the dog leaves it and comes straight back. So if it's something that she's already got and the owner didn't spot, she'll bring it back. What she used to do was either run off with it or try and swallow it.
Oh.
So up litter and let them bring it back. We don't want to encourage that. What we see is as soon as the dog even makes a beeline for it and you spot it, come back here, here's something, here's your toy, here's something better. And, oh my gosh, the dog's already got something. Bring it here, good dog. Whereas the opportunity to go, no, don't touch that, and run after them is guaranteed to get a dog hightailing it away from you, or there it goes, gone.
Now, Karen, we've talked about supervision, we've talked about management, we've talked about the benefits of training, of putting time and energy into training ideal behaviours, good behaviours from your dog, and also training off. Is there something else that we need to cover here?
I think we could just build up on training it off a little bit. The idea of most people train leave, and I've seen dogs that are really horrendous thieves do a great leave. So what they'll do, they'll put the biscuit out and say leave, the dog and put it on their nose, leave, and the dog doesn't touch it. And this dog still has a major theft problem. So it's time to use it. I always treat off or leave. I use off as I can see something in front of me that I want. The way to get it is to sit back and it will come to me. And that's what I use it for. And that includes not just any item at all, any toy, any person, any doorway, because they want to push through to get to the smells on the other side, anything they might chase. So I usually use it in conjunction with a recall as well. So it's off to make the dog sort of put the brakes on and think, oh, I don't need to go after it because you'll go and fetch it for me. Thank you very much. And then turn around, come back here. So that's what I normally teach, off, come. But there is a video on my YouTube account, which is The Wild Paw, if you're wondering where that is. And that's actually got my children teaching off. I'm not in favour of just teaching children to do things without adult supervision or guidance. And I certainly wouldn't do it around a dog that's guarding. But I do think that, sometimes it's useful for the whole family to have a bit of training experience with the dog. So in this instance, I taught the dogs myself first and then let my children use that training as a way of maintaining their own safety. So have a little look at that, because the basics of it are you offer the dog something it wants. It learns to back away and sit. It learns to wait. It learns not to snatch, and it learns that whatever it is it's backing away and sitting for, at first you use food because it's very easy to control, but whatever it is coming to them, not the other way around. And then you have a dog that kind of puts the brakes on for all sorts of reasons, and it's a really useful command, much better than going crackers when they do something because you haven't actually trained them to be a bit more self-controlled.
And we'll put a link to that video in the show notes here. I think that's the easiest way for people to find it. And I've seen that myself, and it's a really, your kids do a really good job there. It's a really nice little video.
I was watching it not long ago, and I thought, God, my kids look really young, because, it was a few years ago that we did it. But, we actually did it for name drop. For Davina McCall, who, was having a few issues with the puppy sort of nipping and things like that, and it's one of those things that if you can demonstrate how it works, everyone goes, oh, yeah, I can see now. I can see exactly how I achieve that. Then you must use it. So you use it in all sorts of circumstances. Don't just teach, oh, the dog leaves the biscuit. That's leaving it incomplete.
Well, I think it would be really good if any of our listeners would like to make a video of themselves training this. It'd be really nice if you do that. If you make a video of yourself training one of these things, do send us a link, and we can embed it in our show notes and share that around. It's always great to see what other people are doing. Yeah,
that reminded me. We had a video a while. The link from Bob Ryder who sent us one. I'm gonna somewhere on Facebook. The trouble with Facebook, you can't search it as far as I know, or I've been able to, which means things get lost very quickly because of the timeline. So I'm going to dig that out.
That would be great. All right then, Karen, I think that's about it for this week. And remember, if you're listening to the show and you have any comments or you'd like to share some experiences, then do get in touch. You can send Karen a tweet on Twitter. That's twitter.com/wildpaw. Or send me a tweet on twitter.com/Jon Buskell, JONBUSCALL. You can also email us. And the email address is podcast@intellidogs.com. And IntelliDogs, that's Karen's website where you can go along and build your own manual. You can put a training manual together. You can also find out information about Karen's book, which is on there. Would you like to mention your book quickly, Karen?
Oh, it's What Your Dog Wants. There you are.
Yep, exactly. And Karen, I think you need to say something about the Advent calendar.
Oh, yes. Well, we're on day 3 now. The Advent calendar is a way of, you can enter and try and win every single day. Every single day of the Advent calendar, we have a new story or tips or training ideas from all sorts of guest people. We've had some great ones so far already. And it's basically an Advent calendar online. So you go to the main site, which is www.advent.intellidogs.com. and click on the door of the day. No peeking at the later ones. It will tell you off for that. And you can go through, you can read the blog that's on there, see what there is to win, and put your comment at the bottom for a chance to win. And it's so much fun. This is, I think, the 3rd or 4th year we've done it. And it is just an absolutely lovely thing to do. It's a great way of learning stuff about your dog and sharing and reading what other people are up to. I was going to say earlier, we have lots of kind of comments about the podcast that people sort of say, oh, but I don't really want to have my name mentioned, but I really like the podcast. And so if you're a lurker out there, and we want to hear from you, because we know that you're out there. We do have some really good supporters of the podcast. I know Colloway's are one, Dougal's Den are another, but all those quieter comments, come on, be brave.
Yeah, that's great. And remember, you can also
leave a review on iTunes.
Yes, that would be great if you go along to iTunes and left us a review there, because it's one of the great ways of getting iTunes to pick us up and get more people who are interested in making the lives of their dogs better. That's what we're all trying to do here. All right then, Karen, let's say goodbye until next time then.
Yeah, bye-bye. Have a good week.
Bye. The bandwidth for the Wild Paw Dog podcast this week was sponsored by Colloways.com and the Lighty Light Up Collar, www.lightupcollar.co.uk, the LED light collar to be seen in.